on there. Hold on. One sec. Left. Hold on. So where is it? Where has it lost or reconnect? Click here to reconnect. Hold on 1 second. Don't know what's happening here. Okay. All right, we're good now. So go live. All right. Okay, so we're now live. Okay, good night, good night, good night. Welcome to the last in our second series of Boss Lady Live. And tonight it is, as every other night, my pleasure to be here to bring you the information that you need, not necessarily want, but need. And tonight we are speaking on feminine gender issues. You know me, I'm always talking about male issues, but for this last season we have, apart from when we're speaking about relationships, I like to normally focus my talks on the males because, you know, they're the last ones that always seek the information. But for the 2 seasons of my Boss Lady Life, I've dealt with almost all the burning issues. So we are going, after tonight, we don't come back until next year, January, and for a date to be announced. So tonight, please remember to like and share. Tell your friends, subscribe to my channel. That's Totally Males. That's youtube.com/The Totally Male. Or you can find me on Samuel Sandra, that's Facebook, or on Totally Male Spa, that's on also Facebook. But subscribe to the Totally Male channel, which is www.youtube.com/The Totally Male. So tonight it's my pleasure to welcome 3 wonderful guests again. And I'm going to start firstly with Dr. Natasha Mortley. And Dr. Natasha K. Mortley is a lecturer and research specialist at the Institute of Gender and Development Studies, Regional Coordinating Unit at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Mortley is a sociologist by training who has over the past 15 years been dedicated to integrating a gender perspective to Caribbean social development and policy issues. Some of her areas of research include women in Caribbean migration, gender and entrepreneurship, gender and climate change, and contemporary Caribbean masculinities. Dr. Mortley considers herself an avid advocate for gender equality and social justice. And then our next guest is Warren Thompson. And Warren is a doctoral student. Is you call it a student? Or you're doing your doctoral studies?
Yes, or candidate.
Right. So he's a deputy registrar, National Children's Registry, PhD, candidate IGDS. And he'll tell us in a little bit what all of that means. Right. And then we have Pat Gillings, one of my friends, I call them my children, not my children by birth, but her son came to me at the age of 1, and he's now 20. How old is Josh now?
21.
21. And I invited her as a single mother of a boy, right, who is now a man or going into manhood. And we want to hear about those challenges and all that she had to deal with. So welcome. Oh, Joshua joined, your biggest fan, right? Welcome, Suzanne. And so we're going to start with Dr. Mortley. Welcome, Dr. Mortley.
Hello, Sandra. Good evening.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to meet you in person. Right, I am Andinis Sims, one of my long-standing customers, made the introduction and the connection with these guests for me because I know he's in the know. And so, Dr. Mortley, just give us an overview of what your job entails on a, I don't want to say on a daily basis, but what does your job entail, really?
Well, as it is right now, it entails operating in a virtual space. I feel like I'm in front of the computer 24 hours now. Um, but at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, we offer the graduate program. So we do the master's, the MPhil, and the PhD degrees in gender and development studies. And I'm a lecturer first and foremost, which means I lecture research methods, and I also lecture gender analysis for policy and development theory as it relates to gender and development. And secondly, I am a research specialist, so I am one of the lead researchers on several of the projects that we have at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. And of course, the Institute is also dedicated, it's part of our mandate. We also do activism. We do outreach to the communities. So it's a combination of lecturing, teaching, research projects, outreach, and activism. That is our mandate. And I think I'm involved in all four of those aspects. Yeah.
Okay, great. And over to you now, Dr. Warren. Your studies, you are doing your doctoral studies in?
Right. Good night. Let me tell you, thank you for
You
having
are
me
so welcome.
first.
It's my pleasure.
So my doctoral research is in gender and development studies. I should tell you firstly that I'm a social worker, a trained social worker. So I do work currently in the child protection sector at the National Children's Registry, Child Protection and Family Services Agency. And on the other side, I do my doctoral research as well as other kinds of engagement with the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. So when I say other kinds of engagement, including teaching, I do teach from time to time, and participate in research projects. And my own doctoral research is on the experiences of women who lead community organizations in Jamaica, trying to understand their experiences a little better, and to see how they manifest or express leadership at that level. And of course, what lessons we can learn about women's leadership for other spheres. And I should tell you, my interest in women's leadership at that level came out of my engagement with communities and community governance structures as a young social worker, where I realized, there was something I observed which I thought was unfair, where women were very, very active in communities, very, very active on the ground. But when it came to being in formal leadership at the community level, they weren't there, and I wasn't accounted for that. And so I wanted to know, for the women who do get there, what does it take for them to get there, and what is the experience like?
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. And Pat, as I said, you have been well, you are more than just a single mom. So let's tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are now and what you're doing and all of that.
Okay.
So we kind of have an idea of who we're speaking to.
Thank you very much for having me, Sandra. Well, 30 years of my professional life in communication, event management, and project management. But I feel my greatest, I think, is being the mother of Joshua. However, in order to ensure that he got the best of me, I changed my career path. Came out of corporate Jamaica at the top of my game and became a dedicated parent, trying to ensure that I had jobs that allowed me to participate fully in his development. And I did that from he was 9 years old. Oh, from he was 7 years old to now. And I am now in the corporate world again, working as a financial advisor. Took the insurance exam, used all of my skill sets, and I am now doing insurance, life insurance, retirement plans, and loving it.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so now I'm back with you now, Doc. All right, so last week and the week before, we had conversations with the men about male versus man. And we had a lot of conversations about, the influences of women, where women are going, and we had a conversation about, can a woman, a single mother, bring up a child, a male child, to become a man. And then we had also, from the week before that, we had a lot of conversations with Dr. Leakim Samaj et al. About just the whole taking over of women in society, and how the men have pretty much taken a back seat, whether deliberately or not. And they're, for want of a better word, they're being left behind. The schools are showing that, it's 80% or 75, between 75 to 80% males, yes, women versus 20% male. And every time I have a conversation, because I have a male store that I've been managing for the last 26 years. And each time I speak on the word gender, the men get very tense, very defensive, very, is a group of people who just want to empower man and empower women, and tell women not to have anything to do with men, or to, manage on their own. So Doc, what says you, and what has been your experience in this whole feminine gender, empowering women? What are you seeing in your work sphere? How have we grown as females in society? And is it to the demise of men? Or is it that we have empowered ourselves to a stage where men don't see us as a mate, or they more see us as competitors? So can you just shed some light on the whole gender issue situation as we see it now in 2020?
Okay, Sandra, that's
Yeah,
a
man, but
very broad question.
you can direct your answer how you want it. Just choose a topic.
So many layers. There's so many
Yes.
layers to that. But in the academic space where I operate, it is not a competitive space.
Right.
Because in the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, we have male and female students, right? As a matter of fact, I think last year, or was it the year before, we had more male students in our program for that year than female students, right? So we have male students, we have male lecturers and adjuncts. Warren Thompson, like he said, is one of our adjunct lecturers in the Institute. And we also partner with other departments, other entities where we work with men.
Right.
In terms of the research projects that I have done in the past 3 years, both of these projects were men and masculinities projects. So the first study was a study on men, community and crime, contemporary masculinities, men, community and crime. And the second study was masculinities and fathering in Jamaica. So in my space, it's not competitive. I operate in a space where we believe we have to engage men. We have to have a space where we work with men to try to figure out our societal issues, to figure out what is going on in society.
Right.
I think we have our spaces where we operate within our space. So there's a space for women to operate together and to have a conversation together and to do our activism together, for us to empower young women together. And there's a space for men to meet and to have their conversations together as men, for them to empower young men, for them to mentor young men. But at some point, we have to come together.
Absolutely.
If we want to see change, if we want to see real change, we have to come together. We can't continue to operate separately. And that is our mandate in the Institute. This is what we believe in. Our male students, when they first come to us, they are a little apprehensive at first because, there are these stereotypes that gender studies is about women's studies.
Right.
But at the end of our program, they realize that it is not at all that. It's a very transformative experience for them, because they come with a certain biased to some extent, but when they leave the program, when they've completed their masters or their PhDs, it's a totally different takeaway for them. You know, they've become transformed. They see gender in a new way. The last project that I did, which is Men and Fathering, the purpose of the project was to engage men who are fathers for us to fight gender-based violence in our communities. Because men listen to men. So if you want to fight violence, if you want to reduce violence, you have to engage men, and you have to they have to be partners with us in trying to stand up against violence in our communities and to reduce violence in our community. So in my space, it is not a competitive space for us in the institute. Yeah.
But the engaging of the society in general to understand the value of the conversation of female roles and male roles and what that looks like. I don't think it always, not all, I don't want to use the word always, it seemed to come across as if we are pitching against each other though. Because men on a whole are not getting that it is no, let me not make that statement. The societal view still is though that we are competing. So I'm not so sure if we are reaching the general populace when it comes to dealing with gender. I joined the gender affairs committee at the PSOJ. And when I went in, most of the conversation really was leaning towards women. Some men, yes, but it was mostly dealing with women, because we're trying to bring up the woman from the state that it was in back in the day, right? Also, I find that I spoke to Dr. Herbert Gale, and he was saying that most of the funding that comes to Jamaica, or whether it's from the government, they are usually directed towards females, because females are seen as being behind. But that's not what we're seeing in the schools with regards to crime. It's usually the men that are being left behind. So what is your view on that?
Well, you're right. I think society still believes that gender studies is predominantly about women. And there's a reason for that. It's not just because of traditional inequalities, but those inequalities still exist. We do have systemic and structural inequalities in our society that still exist. Women do not get the same pay as men for the same work or for the same qualifications, right? There's still gendered stereotypes which put women in a box, in a certain role. You know, this is your place, this is your role in the workplace, in the home, in the community. So you still have that general perception that we are all about women because we have a lot of work to do. Women are still disadvantaged in many spaces and in many ways in our society. So naturally, there's going to be that predominance. But in terms of funding, research funding, when we get research funding, we do gender studies. We do gender studies. We don't do women. I mean, there are some projects that are focused on women and female empowerment. So for instance, this year, early on this year, for last year, I think, when was it? This year? We had a project, we had a handbag project where we went into the communities to give care items and to do some empowerment sessions with women, right? So we do have those projects, but we also have funded projects by international donors that focus on gender and focus on men as well. So those two masculinity studies, for instance, they were funded by UNESCO, which is an international funding agency. So I do not agree that all of the funding is for women. I think the funding is for gender, and it's up to you as the project team or the research team to design a project that gives some attention to men as well and looks at the interaction between men and women and what it means for society and our society progressing and being better and doing better. So
If I may jump
I
in
was going
there.
to segue into you now, Mr. Thompson, as someone who's a social worker. What are you seeing on the ground?
Well, I mean, there are ways in which both males and females are disadvantaged based on what we expect of women versus what we expect of men. I'm going to just jump because I want to touch on something that Dr. Mortley was talking about. Dr. Gale, yes, he does see a lot of the development funding, so not just research funding, but program funding, does go to or it, goes towards women and girls or tackles violence against women and girls. But there's a reason for that. Certainly, there are types of violence that affect males more. So, for example, when you look at um, violence from gang activity, criminal activity, or if you look at homicides in general, males are more likely to be victims in those cases. But there's a difference, though, where how masculinity is constructed predisposes men to suffer a particular kind of violence versus how both how masculinity and femininity are constructed predisposes women to suffer various types of violence at the hand of the other sex.
Right.
So the issue or the concept of power has to be considered. So women suffer violence because of their let me say lack of power, right, or because they are in a position of vulnerability
Right.
to the other sex. And I mean, when you look at even the argument that who males are the ones who are being left behind and so on, if you look at what is causing that, it's not because of a situation where there is this historical or systemic um, issue that causes males to become significantly disadvantaged. But it is how we as males have set ideas about what we ought to be, what we ought to do, which cause us then to be in those kinds of positions. So, for example, males are more likely to suffer from what they call those now deaths through adventurous kinds of activities. For argument's sake, is because men are supposed to be risk takers, we're supposed to be more daring, and those kinds of things. I'm just using that as a very simple
Right.
example. But so the point I'm making is how we say men ought to be predisposes men to suffer in a particular way. At the other side of it, how we say women ought to be causes women to suffer in a particular way at the hand of the other sex. And this is
Yes.
where the issue is.
Yes.
So Dr. Morley was right in saying that gender is not about women only. So
No,
we
I agree with that. But
okay.
as I was saying last week and the week
Mhm.
before that, my thing is, if money is spent to build shelters, to to do all the to deal with women who have been abused and all of that, but the perpetrators are men. So if we spent funding to prevent, then wouldn't we be saving money on the back end when it came to the abuse? I don't know. This is a question because um from my perspective, I'm saying we are treating the end result, whereas Dr. Herbert Gale was
Mhm.
also saying that he when he's speaking to men from like between the ages of 7
Mhm.
to 19, and that is the vulnerable age range, but he cannot get funding to change the trajectory of these people's lives, yet still the funding will come in, because this is not a competition now, I'm just pointing out some of the information that I've received. But the funding is there to try and help, someone who has been abused. You have to take her out of the house. She have to be, she and her children have to be taken care of because the gentleman is abusive. Now, that's not to say that women are not abusive. Let me just say that clear categorically. But the thing is, I am just trying to understand why we're not working on the root cause versus.
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in, Sandra. No, I can't. I can't tell you that I have done any serious analysis.
Yes.
But I can definitely tell you that I am aware of many initiatives tackling issues such tackling gender-based violence. That has specific activities, objectives, and outcomes for males.
Yeah.
Because I think that the global community has recognized that if we're going to tackle an issue such as gender-based violence, intimate partner violence, we have to work also with men.
Yeah.
And some time ago there was I can't remember what the slogan was, but I think Usain Bolt was also a part of it. But the idea behind it, maybe Dr. Mortley, maybe you remember, the idea is it me for she or something like, I don't remember what they call it, or he for she, I think it was. Because in order for us to tackle the substantive issues that cause women to experience exclusion, disadvantage, injustice, disempowerment, we have to work with those who are perpetrating violence and those who, for want of a better word, would be the power holders.
Can I say something though? Can I say something?
All right, so over to you, Pat.
What I found as a single mother, looking and as a professional, I listen to the conversation now. Where is the study on good parents? Where is the study on what when you're from? I'm a single mother, but I'm a product of parents who were married for 48 years. I saw love. So I didn't go out of my way to be a single mother. So I had an idea of what it is that I wanted my son to have an experience in. I'm listening at all times, tonight again, on what the studies are, but I'm not hearing where is the study on what's right, so that's the benchmark, because we're looking on gender violence, we're looking at abuse, but a loving parent with good morals, whether male or female, giving the child the best they can for a good outcome. Where's that benchmark so that in these discussions, someone can say, being a single mother, being a single parent is not all that bad. There are sacrifices that has to be made, dedication, and sometimes you just have to forget about, I need a man or I need a woman. You have to focus on your child. And so I'm not seeing that. So as for someone who wants to say, can I do it on my own? Can get up and leave that abuse, knowing that there are studies that have shown that their good will happen. And so I think maybe we need to start looking at what's right, because you keep hearing what's wrong. And I think that the decisions that I made, I wish I could be a study, because at the end of the day, I left a professional job with many zeros to go into a real hard time. But the end product of today, it was worth every moment of that decision. So I think that the studies need to shift a little.
Maybe there's some clarity. You want to take that, Dr. Mortley?
Well, Pat, like I said, we did a masculinities and positive fathering study last year. It was funded by UNESCO, and I was the project lead on that. And it was focusing on positive fathering. Warren was a part of that study himself, and he perhaps can share some of his experiences. But what we did not look at single mothers, but we looked at men who are positive, who represent positive models of fathering. whatever that may mean for them. So there are some who were single fathers, who were separated, who were married, various types of men. There were some who were not biological fathers, but they were mentors and they were doing community fathering in various ways. And like Warren said, I can speak to several initiatives from various organizations and projects that are looking at men and doing some sort of intervention with our young men within the communities. So that study looked at positive fathering because we wanted to change the narrative, exactly what you're talking about, Pat. We wanted to show and to highlight that there are good fathers in Jamaica. And what does that mean? What does that look like? We produced a short book, a workbook from it, which is being disseminated in schools, highlighting models of positive fathering. We also produced a training manual from that study, which can be used to train men, young men and men who are fathers, on gender issues, on the roles of men in their communities, in their homes, as it relates to reducing gender-based violence. So the studies are there, and perhaps we need to do more in terms of disseminating our findings. I think perhaps that's what we need to do.
Yes.
Last year for International Men's Day, I wrote a piece in the paper about that study. But I think we need to do more dissemination. We need to have more dialogue. So Sandra, what you're doing is a good thing. You're keeping the conversations open. It's always good to have balanced perspectives.
Yeah, balance is a must, I think. And what I want is the conversation to be constantly had. And
Yeah.
it's because what I think a lot of what is happening is a misunderstanding. But also from looking on, I see a lack of will in terms of policies. A lot of policies exist. A lot of rules exist. But for example, someone like a Pat, someone like many girlfriends I know, they leave a household with their 3 kids, their 2 kids, their 1 child. And although on paper they may have gone to court, on paper I can speak with knowledge with one particular person that I know. She went to court. The court said he is to pay X amount per month to the child. Up to this day, she has never received a cent, and nothing happens. So what I want to know, but let me hasten to say there are many good fathers, and there's a lot happening, and I see men are stepping up more and more each day. But women are also choosing to have children on their own deliberately, because in their minds, or when we look around, we don't see that heavy role model to say, well, okay, this is what a family looks like, or this is what I'm looking for in a man, or whatever. So they're aging out, and so they deliberately decide to have children on their own without a father involved. Now, Warren, what is your, as someone who is out there in social work, what are you seeing? What are the effects of this kind of decision, and or should I say lack of enforcement with policies and the courts? What is the effects that you are seeing? I mean, we can all say that's the crime and all of that's happening, but from your perspective.
Right. I'm not sure if I can say what is the effect of the courts not following through to ensure that there is enforcement of some of these things. So, for example, I know you are speaking to the contribution or not the contribution order, the maintenance.
In the States, people's wages are garnished and all of that. Why does not happen here?
Well, I mean, there are some things that we're just not there yet. and
Why?
maybe we'll get there.
Why?
Um,
You have
uh,
any idea?
so you see, when I get these kinds of questions, I tell people speak to your political representative so
Yeah,
they can make a motion
but
in Parliament. You know?
from us
Yes,
study as not that I want to say from a studying
yes.
point of view, from an intellectual point of view. Why do you think we are not there yet? Talk about things,
So
man.
no, but
Talk
you
about
said it.
things,
No,
man.
you said it though. Sandra, you said it. There's a lack of political will with many things. There are many things that are just not important yet to our legislators and to our policymakers, which is why we engage in the advocacy to continue to remind them that these
No,
are things
but
that
how
need to
many
be
times
done.
are we going to remind Miss Warren? If we have certain, all right, for example, just a basic
Yeah.
analogy. You put a stoplight so that
Hmm.
people can conform. It's your turn now to stop, your turn to go. You need to slow down, right? People need to know that whatever they do have consequences. You don't follow these things, you get a ticket, you might crash, whatever.
Hmm.
Men are allowed to just willy-nilly breathe and leave. No, no backlash, no punishment, no, he don't lose his job, he don't get his wages garnished, he don't, I mean, him socialize with his boys same way, him get enough girl in a bung the same way, because there's just no connection with, okay, as a man, this is your responsibility for the seed that you have planted. And the woman, like Pat, would have to pick up where he left off and do everything on her own. Now, Pat, no, before you answer, Pat, I give you an opportunity to speak, Warren.
Yeah. You see, the issue is culture. So there are a lot of things that we expect from females that we don't expect from males.
Mm,
Think about it. When a man gets up and leaves his children, leaves his family, you might
mm-hmm,
hear the mother, out of being angry, she might talk about the careless man, you know.
mm-hmm.
But let it be though that it's the mother who gets up and leaves the children.
No, she wicked.
He's not the only person talking about it. The entire
Careless,
community, all the family, they're
careless.
tearing her down
Yes.
because it is totally unacceptable that she can be this irresponsible towards her child. It's because what we expect of mothers or women is not the same
So
that we
are you
expect of men.
saying
And
as a
I'm saying to
nation
you,
we're sending the wrong message to our men?
we are, and
So
the
talk of the
expectation
things
is
now,
not just
talk of the things, Warren,
the
man. Talk it up. Talk it up with
expectation
that
is
what
not
you
just
say.
it's not just in wider society, but it's in the institutions of society as well. So when you
Mhm.
look at policies in courts, in government, in legislation, we require more from women as parents than we do from men. And we hope that one day we'll get there where men are held to account for being responsible,
And I'm
towards
saying we
the
need to
children.
do more than hope.
Well,
I'm
we are
saying
engaging. No,
we
we
need
are
to
engaging in
push
the advocacy.
in
We are engaging in
academia. We need to push. We
yes,
need to write, to bring up more papers and stuff on the effects when a man is absent from his family, what happens to that family.
mhm,
As Pat said, when you are forced to do this on your own, what is the result? All of these things, what is happening with the good families, how the
right,
good families turn out. So
yeah,
these are some of the things that I think we need to push for in academia, push the government. Because if you are doing the research, you are on the ground, you see what is happening. I think although we're in 2020 and women have come a far way.
mhm,
When I look on the road these days, and I see the women, everybody pushing them nice car, them living them nice house, they have their children, but they're doing it alone.
yeah.
There's something wrong with that picture.
But it starts long before the males leave. So which is why, for example, we are pushing for paternity leave, or what
Hmm.
they call
For
parental leave
equity.
rather, to be a thing rather than maternity leave, because maternity leave says that women ought to be there but men do not have to. Parental leave or paternal leave say that it is best if both male and female, mother and father, are present in those early days of a child's life. So
Right.
we are, as I said, the advocacy is taking place, and we are
Warren, can
there.
I
Go ahead.
say something?
Go ahead.
Yes.
My first knowledge of inequality was my son was in Bustamante Children's Hospital 5 days of his life. And his father is not Jamaican, so it's not a Jamaican situation, it's men. His father flew to
Not
Jamaica
to
to
say
support
that even
me.
if he wasn't Jamaican, it wouldn't
Right,
happen.
so that the
But
point is,
let us put that
talk
out there.
about
Because
Jamaica,
men are in the same situation.
men. And when he tried to be there so that I could go home, the hospital's rule says after 10 o'clock, men cannot be in the hospital. Once I understood, because they said that there were those who overpowered the nurses and many other things, it
That's
didn't allow
interesting.
me to get the comfort to go home because it was not allowed. So that's a policy within a hospital structure because of a rule. But something needs to happen with that. Secondly,
But that has changed, though. That has changed.
thankfully. Secondly, my son is a sports person and do all these things. Every time I show up, I see I'm the only female. And I recognize, because I'm not in the boys' club, having a drink, doing so intellectually, I'm here. But because when I look around me, my female friends and people are taking the beer from the bar to the persons, whilst I want to have the conversation about the game, the structure, what is the next step. I'm looking at administration, but they're like, hello, this is a boys' club. So at every point that I tried to be level in a decision of my son's life, I had to recognize that I'm a girl. And so I had to step back. It happened for all his sports life. It happened if I needed to speak, I had to remember that he is at a boys' school. So I had to ensure that I didn't look like the hovering mother. I didn't look like the mother who came to the boys' school to have a conversation. I had to adjust myself to ensure that the masculinity of my child is not seen because his mother is coming to fight the battle, for want of a better word. But I believe that I also blame women. And I'm not the typical. And I say that because my son and his father has the most brilliant relationship, but he was not the best father of contributing. Because my thing is that it's his father. I have a son who needs to know his history. Whilst a woman can get married and disappear into her husband's life, a boy needs to know, where am I from? What is my history? And so I ensured that he knows everybody on his father's side, to every grandfather, to every uncle, and can speak about his family, but yet we're not together. A lot of women can't get there. They spend the time getting upset about the man, and the child now has to determine, have I a worthless father? Do I have a father who cares? But the child has never gotten the opportunity to say to the father, do you love me? Because the mother has now filled the head with everything else. And that changes the whole game. I believe also that women need to take responsibility as mothers. And because of that, if we're going to talk about family, it is that we need to say to mothers, who cares what happened? Apart from being abused in a physical sense and all the other sense that's wrong. If it is that a relationship doesn't work and you have children, be a parent. Be a parent and ensure that your child has a balance and can know love, can feel, can enjoy life, knowing that my parents care. And it's not a war. I've seen too many in my, just even this weekend, I've seen where because of that struggle, a child is failing his exams because he's concerned, because he loves both parents. We have to accept the fact that we brought the children here. That was my philosophy. I brought my child into this world. I can't spend the time wondering, he's going to give me $3, $4. Thankfully, as a professional, had my education, so I had choice. But when you have to make that choice continuously every day, financially it gets you. You only have one income. So you can't, for a lot of things, even if it's a bad relationship, if you have two parents getting the right income, the banks give you all the money you need. But when
Yeah,
you go in,
you know,
nothing.
but you know, Pat, not to cut you, but you know, one of my staff members made a very valid point also, and just to touch on what you said, most men don't come around because of finances. If they don't have it, they're definitely not going to come. Because if they come and they don't have the money, many times it's a quarrel, an argument about, you know, me have to do everything, yada yada yada. However, a man can be in a situation where, just like the hospital, they relieve you of some of the stress and strain when it comes to dealing with the child on a one-on-one basis. For example, you can't make it to a function, but the father can go. You can't make it to X place, but the father can go. You can't do homework this evening, but the father can help with the homework. Things like that. But how do we, Doc, how do we, I don't know, how does a woman, or how can a woman separate that that humanness of feeling, yes, you've been let down by this person, but you still have to involve the man in this kind of unit? Is that something that's spoken about in the gender affairs um, conversation?
Not really. I
Yeah.
don't think I
Okay.
can really speak to that. We've not really looked at that aspect of things. As a matter of fact, in the um, fathering study that we did last year, one of the comments we got is that we need to do another study which looks at,
Mm-hmm.
so we looked at men as fathers. But the suggestion was that we look at another study looking at parenting. So looking at men and women who are parents and that relationship, the relationship which is a parental relationship and not necessarily an intimate partner love relationship. So that was one of the some of the feedback we got was for us to do some further research on that, which I think has its value. I think that's very important because coming out of the fathering study, a lot of men indicated that they felt that they were only seen as financial
General.
providers in Jamaican society, right? In the court system, it's all about providing the money. In the social spaces, it's all about you not providing for your child. Even in the hospital setting, there were some men who said, you know, the medical professionals do not see them as fathers who need to be in the delivery room or who need to be holding the baby. Basically, this is not your place, it's not your space, go out into a waiting room. So they feel like they are seen in that way, and they want to be seen as in other roles as it relates to fathering, right? And you're right, I think policy has to change. Something like paternity leave is very important because it sends a very strong message that men need to be present in the raising of the child. And it's not just about providing money. Paternity leave sends a strong signal to our workplaces that a man has to be bonding with his newborn, right? Policy in the hospital need to change. Even something as simple as our public spaces like bathrooms, you would notice there's no bathroom. Bathrooms normally have changing areas in the female bathrooms for women to change the baby or whatever. The male bathrooms don't have that. And there were
I never thought about that.
and there were men in the study who said when they travel, they go to Canada and other places in North America or whatever, you find bathrooms with change facilities. The male bathrooms having change facilities for men to change babies, We don't see that in the Caribbean. And that is, things like that are very important. Something as simple as that sends a strong signal that a man has to be present. He has to be part of the nurturing and the caring and the changing of the baby when you're out in public. So when you're out in public.
But the point I'm trying to make, Doc, is yes, it's you're speaking to the men, but are we speaking to the women
Right.
about the roles that are
Yeah.
important in the children's lives? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so you're
Are we
right.
having that conversation?
So we've recognized in the Institute the need for studies around that, around the parenting relationships. And this is something we're looking forward to doing in our next study around masculinities. But you're right, that is needed in an academic space and in terms of research. But on a personal level, I cannot really speak to, I mean, my advice is, the child comes first, and no matter what the relationship is, I think people need to recognize that the child comes first, and the man should not just be seen as a paycheck. He has to be present in various ways.
In your community walks, as in your career, what is the conversation the women are having with regards to this topic?
That's for Warren, right?
Yes, that's for Warren.
Oh,
yeah. There's no money. There's no money.
No, it's difficult to answer that question. But I mean, generally, there is this expectation that a man is going to provide. Women expect that men provide. Men expect as well that they are going to provide, and if they can't provide, then they disappear. And there's this idea, and I've spoken about it many times, even for myself. We have been taught, and sometimes we don't even realize that this is something that a man does. A man provides for his family, and if we are not able to provide, then we ought not to be there. And I've spoken already in other spaces about how that expectation has even been maybe oppressive is a strong word, but it's something that I have felt where, for example, when my wife and children are at home, when I'm going home from work, many times I stop at the supermarket to pick up stuff that if I were there by myself, I would not have got to the supermarket at all. Because at the back of my head is this thing that I need to ensure that there is food there. And I hear that women experience this too, but for some reason I experience it, that I need to ensure that there is food there to, so that they eat. I need to ensure that all the bills are paid, because as a man, this is something that I have to do. I have to take care of my family. And when men don't do it, we experience a blow to our sense of masculinity, and it makes it even worse.
Not
but can I ask you a question?
Things are probably changing now.
So what is your view? What is your view in gender studies where men, there's now a shift? Because a lot of the women are having their high-powered jobs, and the men are not having the powerhouse jobs. Well, some of the men, because everything is some. There's no
right across the board, yes.
Right. So what I want to know, there's a shift. Is that being looked at as a possible new norm, or because the women have gone on to get their many degrees and are now at the top of the organization? I mean, right now, at the top of BNS, at the top of First Global, at the top of Sagicor are all women. So let's say their counterparts are not yet at that level. Would it be okay, or would it be seen as infideg if the man stayed home and took care of the children, or the man took a lesser job since he's not earning as much and still have value in the household?
So I'll say two things. I say the good thing is that things and times are changing, maybe slowly, but things are changing, and there are different ways.
The conversation changing.
Yeah, So men are finding different ways of expressing and exerting masculinity. The other thing I want to say though, when you say add value, maybe we need to define what that means.
Right?
You know, what is the value that men are expected to bring to the home or to the family? So certainly in time gone by, there was this expectation that a man is supposed to be the provider. And if he provides, he can then play a very marginal role in the family once he's providing, you know, where they're not providing as much or are not able to provide, what other kinds of value are men bringing? I mean, I've heard stories of men who have decided to be stay-at-home dads, and certainly the old boys club, you know, make all kinds of comments about it, you know, because a real man doesn't stay home. A
That's
real
the
man is not a,
thinking.
yeah, a real man is not a what they call it, a stay-at-home dad or whatever. But the good thing is that as more and more persons engage in a different way of expressing their sense of self as a man, things change. So with each generation, things change, and we're hoping that you know, somebody made a comment, Naron made a comment in the earlier, where he says one of the issues with policy and legislation is that we have mainly men in those spaces, and the men who are in those spaces are holding on to perhaps an old or archaic way of manhood. So a man is supposed to do this, or a man is supposed to be that, and because of that, we're not getting the change at that level as often.
But isn't it driving away the men who cannot provide?
Driving them away from where?
Meaning, because the woman is complaining about you can do this or you can do that, or the constant complaint about money
Mhm.
is because, all right, let's say for argument's sake, we have been doing all that has been the situation for however long. And what is happening now is that men are staying away when they don't have money. So why isn't there a shift then
But you see the thing
to
though, you know,
say
no, there's
okay, do
no
what?
Sandra, there's a shift taking place. There's a shift taking place because I've heard many young
So
men,
come here, Pat. So come, I see
many
your
young
bird.
men who are very much willing to be kept men. You know,
Yeah, but
They're-
not kept in a good way.
what do you
Kept,
mean? What do you mean by
no,
kept in a
kept,
good way?
kept
But
as
not in
in.
a good way. What does that mean?
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna explain. You have many men who have chosen as their career to seek women who are in a better position for them to make their lives simpler.
Right.
They're not pressured to buy car, they're not pressured to buy house, and they can have 3, 4, 5 women, no problem, right? You have those people out there, and I'm not calling them men because they're really males in a man frame, right? So let's just be clear on that.
Yeah, you have to explain
So,
what you mean by
so,
that.
so, so
Sorry,
if,
but go
if
ahead.
it's for profit, then that's not the one I'm talking about. Just like we have women who use men, we're talking about
Okay.
men
Mhm.
who use women. So now we're talking about now the males who really and truly him work hard, him have him thing together, but he's just not working enough, or he found himself in a relationship with a female who has excelled. Because as you know, I'm sure in your studies you'll see that many men use their money, put women or help women to upgrade themselves, and then they're still at this level when the woman is at this level. It happens in many cases. I've seen it, and I'm sure you have too. But what I'm saying is you have these men who and and maybe they're the more caring one too. Because you have some men who are awesome parents. I don't want to call them fathers because yes, he's a father, but he's also a parent. So what happened if he wants to stay home, or not necessarily stay home, but take a lesser paying job, or that's what he can get anyway, and then he does most of the home stuff while the woman who is the breadwinner then brings home the bacon, but they come together as a unit and make it happen. What's wrong with that?
But there's nothing wrong with that, Sandra. And I want to tell you that happens a lot here in Jamaica. It happens a lot. You know, school principal, her husband is a taxi driver. You know,
Right.
it happens a lot. Or the husband works on is a construction worker. It happens. No, I don't know how they negotiate. Their
But that's because
relationship in it.
they're together. What happens now if they separate? You get what I'm saying?
I
When they
understand what you're saying, but
separate now, he's no longer in the house doing the house chores. She's in her high paying job. He can't contribute because he's not, have it. What is his role then?
I'm not sure because you said that they're no longer together.
Yes, so that's
So
what I'm saying.
so if they're
So
no longer,
now,
so what
and
is his
what
role in relation to
in
what?
many of those situations now is that he stays away because he don't have it to give.
Oh, so you mean stay away from the
The,
children,
the
the
unit,
family?
the unit, because he don't feel like he has what we said before. He was a hands-on dad
Yeah.
because he was the one, taking care of the family and all of that. But then break up for whatever reason. What
But
is now his role? Yes, Doc.
Right.
but if he was a hands-on dad when they were together,
Hmm.
if they break up, I don't see that changing much.
Right.
I don't see that
If
changing.
he's no longer in the household,
If you're no longer in the household, it shouldn't change the fact that you have been a hands-on dad. A hands-on dad is always going to be a hands-on dad no matter where he is. So I
Doc,
but
don't see
most
that
times men
changing.
say women
women
prevent them.
change that decision
Go
because
ahead.
the father is available, the father is willing, but women make the decisions that make that process because that's power. You see, um, even though I'm able to say that I'm proud of being a single mother, I'm still saying that the decisions that women take seriously affect the contribution of men. There are bad ones, but there are good ones as well. And it is the decision made by women, some women, that make that relationship and continuity of their children's life being the same. Yes, you are outside, but at the end of the day, there has to be a balance. You can't just wholehearted because you're now saying, well, you left me. Emotions really tough. It's very hard to make that decision. But I had no brothers, but I saw, as I told you, a loving parents, and I saw good men around me. The most important one being my father. So for most of my son's life, to ensure that the tie is tied properly, to ensure that the handshake is one that not putty, a good handshake. My father gave that role. I took my son home to Mandeville a lot to ensure that he knew that eggs came from
Don't
chicken.
forget the Godfather. Don't forget the
And and
Godfather.
and and the most important role why I'm a part of this is that the first haircut, my son's godfather took him to Totally Male. And all he did was cut a little thing around the back here. That was the sum total of the haircut. But the experience was that he was in a man's world. And that experience was to take his godson to the barber. That was something that he contributed to. I also say to parents sometimes, your godparents don't have to be PhDs, because what you want is somebody to nurture and assist you. And a lot of times we spend more time looking at the who and the who to be the godparents instead of looking at really what's the role. Because 9 times out of 10, if you're a professional and need help, you can't call your lawyer
No,
godparent
I'm busy.
to take care of the child. So you have to, as a parent, be very mindful of these things. But it takes a lot to give up yourself and forget about ego. It's really about that to ensure that we keep a balance and just remember it's about the child, it's about the children. It's a tough thing to do. Let it be known that it's not easy. Every now and again, you have to go in a locked space and breathe. Come back out so the child still see you smiling because you just heard the news that I'm sorry, the school fee needs to be paid. I'm supposed to take them somewhere and I can't come. And you really want to say what you want to say, but you know that you have to breathe and say, Dad is not able to come this time. I'm going to take you. We'll have fun at the same time and do something exciting so that you leave the father still in the mind of the child to be a loving father who just had a little situation. And even if that's not what it is, you have to create that situation. I think I deserve a trophy for that because it's not easy.
Yes.
It's not easy. And so parents who don't have that willpower to know that it's your role to just keep the child in that space of happiness, in that love, they react. And by their reaction, the child is affected. And the ripple effect, they become a teenager, get in trouble in school, join the wrong group, becomes a 21-year-old, have a girl pregnant, now a father. There's nothing that he can use as a guide to say what
Point
is
of reference. Point of
so
reference.
the cycle continues. And if he goes and asks the father, who is now less than 40 years old, because the age gap now is now closing, everybody just said, just leave the girl and you find a next girl. And so you're seeing that now in that other space, when in fact it starts with us. It really does. No matter what the situation, we have to find that thing to keep the balance until, because interestingly, a number of my friends who had issues with the fathers at 18 years old, the father was the one why they got through to university in the US, in Canada, in England, because that little signature allowed them to be accepted into a university, and they are great. And that's when the father's love kick in. My situation is allow it to happen. Yes, it didn't happen between birth and 18, but guess what? The contribution that happened at 18 is a catapult the child to be the best professional. And so you have to it's a
You have to
given.
keep, you have to keep the, you have to try to be a
A
participant,
mental
keeping the
have to
wheels
keep positive.
turning.
And
That's what you're
that's the
saying.
only suggestion I can give.
Yeah. Pat, I want to. I can't give you a trophy, but I want to I want to commend you, especially for ensuring that your son had a relationship with his father. I
And
know we have.
many male mentors.
Right.
Many male
I know
men.
we have a narrative in Jamaica of the worthless papa, and you'd be amazed at how many fathers cry because they want to be in relation, they want to have a relationship with their child,
I
and there
can
are
tell you.
many women who deny children that relationship. In fact, I think it's, oh gosh, Dr. Donovan Thomas um, said that when he was doing his doctoral research, many of the patients at Ward 21, when he looked into the case histories, many of them had conflicts with their mothers. And at the heart of the conflict was the mother did not allow them to have a relationship with the fathers. And we have seen, even in our field, where a lot of children with conduct disorders are children who were not able to have a relationship with their fathers or with their father's family because they were denied that by their mothers. Either the mother thought the father was not contributing or careless or worthless, or he hurt the mother so much that she could not forgive him enough to ensure that the child had a relationship with him. And we have seen many of those kinds of
Yes.
cases, but we have also seen the fathers crying in the family court or making multiple attempts to reach out to their children to have relationship. And as we said, many men even contribute a little bit. Once the children do well, they can't find prouder than them. They can't find prouder than them.
Mm-hmm. Um, what, Pat, as a single mother, you can only speak of a Jamaican experience, but as a single mother growing up a boy, um, yes, you're saying involve the father, but what are some of the things, some of the standout points and in the span of his life that you would say you want to get out, because we want to have this female conversation, because as Dr. Samaj and many of the other men said in our discussion with male versus man,
Right.
their word to the woman is that men do things because of women. So in my brain, that means that we can change the situation if we change what we require. One, if we change what we require, and we also need to teach people how to treat us. That's all. And so it boiled down, I'll even go as far as it boiled down to when you're having children, you have to select not the specimen, but the qualities of the specimen. Can you say anything where that is concerned? Because as you said, you knew love, right? You knew love, and we don't know people, and see me and come live with me is two different things. But it is happening, and it's happening worldwide, and it's happening rampantly. What can we do as women to change this trajectory?
Well, let me tell you, my 9 months of pregnancy was the best. I think my son's father was like the best. My story is not going to be, Lord, he was the worst. No, he made my pregnancy the best. I had the best pregnancy. And I think as a result, you have to have that so as to not have a child that is continuously ill. Because when you have all of those issues, it comes right back into the embryo. And if you know the biological thing, that's how it is. But men will always be men because they stray. And those that do, you are going to be left with a child. You also have to make that decision. And it is about the strength of a woman. The upbringing of a woman. If you know that you have value, then you have to now move on. And I can't compare myself with everybody. I may be an anomaly, I don't know. But I'm just saying that in accepting love, you don't know what kind of child you're going to have. Love is love. So for those people who want to look at DNA and, top job and all of that, I'm sorry to say that it may not work out. It is that if you have a relationship, it is on a totally different ground. But a friend of mine once said, some people married for love and some people married for money. Some get both. And when you get both, that's a good thing. If you don't, then there's an issue. But once you know that this is the situation, I believe that you have to find it in yourself to not have ego or too much of an ego that you can't seek help. You have to also know that you have mentors. There are people out there that they will be there for you. And so I always consider raising my son that I have a village, because I had a village. Village not meaning every 5 minutes I can have him dropped off somewhere, but a village of people who I value their opinion. I value the fact that they know that I'm struggling, but the world does not know that I'm struggling. They value the fact that if I want to cry, I know who to go to cry on their shoulder, because not all the village you can do that with. And I also know that there are absolutely amazing men in this country and outside of Jamaica that may not have a child because their relationship not at a place that they have a child. And they're not just having an offspring because I reach 40 and I just need to sow my seed. Those people will nurture a child. But you, the parent, have to know that
you have to be proactive.
I have a boy. So he wasn't going to go to everybody's house because I didn't grow up going to everybody's house. I had many people at my house, feeding many people at my house, taking many people to swimming and choir and cricket, because I love all these children. Just Sunday, somebody thought a youngster was my son. And I had to tell him, no, it's my son's friend from First Form 2010. And they've gone straight to university, but he thought they both were my children.
Right.
So love is love. And my son went to a boys' school, and it was amazing to see how many boys had nobody to tell that they had a good grade. Their mother had 6 more children in 6 more schools trying to get life going. So I got an A. So what? That's why I sent it to school. But I had a purpose, because my son knew that when he saw in a class a child needed guidance and thing, I go to pick him up and he says, Mom, I need you to talk to so-and-so. And that was how I was there. And it went straight up to university, where again, I walked in a room and a man saw my company logo on my shirt and said, oh, you're an employer of choice. And I said, no, I'm just that boy's mother. So he said, but all the engineers are running towards you. I said, because at 2 a.m. in the morning, I have a thermos with Milo and sandwiches when they're in a lab. That's the only reason they know me, because I care to know that outside of my son wanting something warm, I know that there are 10 of them in the room. So I don't carry one sandwich and one cup of tea. I make a basket of food and take it there. So you can be mother to many children and make them feel love, even though they're in a household with somebody who not give. It's not that the parent don't love them, Time. And
Doc,
so,
do you think women know their role?
yes.
Is that for me,
Yes,
Sandra?
yes, Doc.
Yes, I think women know their roles, and we know
When
our
I said
roles
no,
very
Doc, I mean
well.
no. As a parent, or even that,
As a
do they
parent.
know the power that they wield? Are they aware of it?
I think so. I think women are very self-aware in terms of
So
their
why
roles as
aren't they
mothers.
getting what
Yeah,
they
I do
need?
think so. What they need
Every
in what
man on the panel
from
said
men?
that every man do everything that them do because of women. So why aren't we getting what we need?
Is that a cop-out
Whether it's a
though?
cop out or not, that's what they're
Is that a
saying.
cop-out?
So why
I don't
aren't
know
we
if I
more
believe.
successful in getting what we want from our men? Then if they're saying that everything that they do, and every man you ask them say the same thing, why aren't we? Is it that we don't require it? Is it that we don't require it? Or it is that we are tired? Or we just say, you know what? This is the hand that I've been dealt, and I am going to bring up this child, instead of like Pat, who, okay, she surrounded herself in a village. I am thinking that based on the level of power that they say we have, I think we should have been doing better, don't you think?
Dr. Mortley, I'm going to let you think. I'm going to let you think about it some more before you answer. But I want to make a plug here.
Yes.
So Dr. Mortley asked if it was a cop out. Historically, and this is how patriarchy works as well. Women have been blamed for everything that we think is wrong with men. Women are
Which is what I said.
Always the scapegoat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what I would want you to say, Sandra, when you say why women are not getting everything that we need, what do women need?
Not everything. More,
or I'm getting more. Okay, what does that more entail? I'm just curious.
No, meaning if they're saying that we have the power, any man you pick out there said the same thing. We have the power. If they were a woman, what and what they would have done, and how they could get it, right? Yet still, we supposedly have this power, and the single parent homes are so many. The fact that the women are single in abundance or having to share whether willingly or unwillingly. What is there is a gender gap somewhere. Is either we don't know our power or men don't feel as if they're required to step up to what it is that we need, or we are not letting them understand what it is that we need.
Okay,
Something
so I
missing.
To walk away. We just need to, when you see that you're compromised, you need to walk away.
No, but apart from walking away, do we understand the power that we have and how
Yes.
to use it? Is a good question, you know?
yeah, but we
Where
are
we
also
thought
It's a very good question.
in our
but we are
household,
assuming that they're not getting what they
in
want.
our house, what that?
I said there's an assumption here that they aren't getting what they want. And I'm not sure if that is in fact the case. I think many women are getting what they want from their partners or the fathers of their children. Um, and I want to say too, I think men's conversations change as well
Mm-hmm.
based on the spaces in which they're operating. So for men, there's the rum shop talk, there's the football field talk, there's the workplace talk, and there's the household talk. Men's
Yeah,
conversations
but the
change.
minute you say to a man, let's talk, he gets tight.
Right. Right. And sometimes the type of masculinities that they manifest changes based on the space that they're in and who they're speaking to. And I've heard men say this. Men have said this to me in focus group discussions that, based on who's around, the conversation changes and they perhaps manifest or display a different type of masculinities. So we're assuming that women are not getting what they want from their men. But I think women know their roles, they know their powers, and they have their ways in their relationships, in their households of getting what they need from their men. But
But
women,
why do you have to
So
do
how
that?
do you explain so many single parent homes? And even when there's a man in it, most times you ask the child who's his role model is his mother.
well, it can change because there are households where you have both parents and the men may not be doing much. And then there are households that are single parent households, but the men are still doing or contributing. So I think it's not that fixed, I should say. Right? It's not that fixed. I don't think a single parent household is an indicator that the man is not doing what he needs to do. I think that's an incorrect assumption. Right?
And
I think you made a good point just
yes,
now about the men. In every sphere they are, the conversation
The
changes.
conversation
And,
changes.
and
There
so
are
and
different
so
masculinities. Yes.
which is why sometimes women go to the work on payday to get paid. No, seriously, because the man now want to show that yes, every week I give the money. Had she waited until he got home, it probably would have been finished at the rum bar at the many different places of entertainment. So you find that some people make that decision. It's an embarrassing situation because again, a man should know that this is what I have to do and I just do it.
Yeah.
But you made a good point that the conversation to keep manly in a bar is different than the conversation. And a friend of mine told somebody one day when they asked, so you find girl now and she turned the government, and the person said, no sir, me and the government in my house. Really, but you have to keep the faith. And my situation is that because it's coming from so far, yes, we want change, but I think the conversation stems to the relationship you're in and the respect and the regard that you have for one another to determine. But studies are important because data is important, because data drives funding. funding drives policy.
Yeah.
So your roles, even though I have seen success, documentation, I'm a one-off. Maybe in your documents that you have, because by studying fathers, they will always say the challenge is that women may not want to do something, and so there has to be a connection, as you rightly said, that could be something down the road to determine why is it that someone who has the responsibility as a parent, as a single mother, doing the right thing is not part of a study that is interlinked with the study of fathers, good fathers? What is the connection that makes then a good parent? Because if we have good fathers and we have good mothers, then something right happened in the parenting. And maybe that's what we need to tap into to push into the various spheres.
Okay, so all right. So, Doc, is there anything that you wanted to get out in this forum about gender issues in 2020? Where we are now, where we're going, where you see us going? Anything that you particularly wanted to get out there?
Yeah, I think for me, we are seeing gender roles changing. Gender roles are evolving and they are changing. And we have to, I think dis- we have to show these gender roles that are changing. We have to project more of that. We can't be, the conversation cannot be the same. The narrative cannot be the same old, same old. We need to stop this thing about um, saying that they're deadbeat dads. They're good dads, and
There are many good dads,
there are many good dads. There are many good men,
and
and
it
we
could
have
be many more if allowed.
right. Um, but I think the gender roles are changing. They're evolving. I think it for me it depends. I think it depends on. I don't like to make these broad assumptions. I think it depends on the individual and it depends on the relationships, and people have to navigate their relationships. At the end of the day, all of what's being said in public and what men are saying in their different spaces, but at the end of the day you have to navigate your relationships and deal with your partner and your family in a private space. And I think we need to understand that that's what it depends on. It boils down to that. So for us in the institute, we predominantly focus on women's issues and empowerment and looking at inequalities, especially as it relates to violence against women. But we also try to
Has
engage.
that improved? Has that improved? Where are we with that now?
Well,
From where we were before?
Because of COVID-19, we are seeing an increase in the incidence of violence against women and girls in Jamaica. So 2020,
Really?
yeah, 2020 has not been a very good year in terms of gender-based violence. But in
And that
terms
is that because people are spending more time in the household together?
Yeah, people are at home more. Children and girls are in more vulnerable positions now because they're being left at home. They're being left with friends and relatives, distant relatives, and therefore in more vulnerable positions, or they're being left at home alone. Um,
Okay.
Women are at home, and people are losing their jobs or not, able to fulfill their economic roles, and people are frustrated, and there's stress, there's anxiety, and I think that is contributing to the violence that we're seeing, the spike in violence that we're seeing now. People do not have the outlets that they would normally have because we are in shutdown and stay-at-home mode, right?
Anybody looking at the matey factor? The
Sorry?
absence of the matey factor. Men are talking about that outlet. We're talking about things them in the dark.
Yep.
Talking about things them because sometimes it may to bring balance to the situation. No, me don't. I don't talk in the dark. It's men I talk to, and there's, because of the lockdown, you cannot be out there. You one check every now and again. That's also a part of it. Let us start call a spade a spade. That is
Yeah.
also a part of it. And so that brings him balance because that was his go-to spot. So now he goes home. The world is ending, and he does not have that outlet. That's also a part of it too. Anyway, go and
Yeah.
finish it. I just thought I'd put that in.
So we need to investigate that, Sandra.
Yes, that's a part of the research.
Yeah.
That needs to be a part of the research because they talk about that even at one stage as doing marriage counseling, and long time ago, and the counselor brought up that many marriages survive because of the external relationship, and that was like a shock to me. And so, because people marry people who not necessarily fit the bill that they want, but whether they think it's time, or the person got pregnant, or they know each other a long time, or as some people say, I did promise myself that when I get to 40, I'm getting married. So whoever in them life at the time, without giving it much thought. So sometimes there's that outlet that we discount, and we don't put much credence to it until at a time like now.
Yeah.
That outlet is there.
As a matter of fact, there are some societies that legalize prostitution for that very reason, because there's a belief that prostitution is functional for society and it's functional for the family, right? So there are societies that legalize prostitution because
Thank God it ain't here.
but that is one perspective. So yeah, I can see that being a contributing factor for sure. But
So therefore, when this is all over, a lot of work will have to be done again.
yeah, but the good news is there are lots of projects that are going on now. So the EU and UNDP, they have a Spotlight initiative, which is a Caribbean-wide initiative, and there's a lot of money being thrown into gender-based violence. It's all about reducing gender-based violence. The OAS, IDB, lots of funding for gender-based violence. So that's good news.
And they're taking both into consideration, the males and the females. So
well, looking at various aspects, looking at the legislative and policy framework, looking at the role of CSOs and NGOs, trying to get more CSOs involved, so that because the CSOs work on the ground and they work in the community.
For the people who don't know what are CSOs,
civil society organizations, they work on the ground, they work within the communities, so there's more intervention that can take place through a CSO. So this initiative looks at various aspects and various layers within society. So that's good news. There's a lot of research on it. What I don't remember what I was saying initially though. Where's the end up going? So
we're just saying what it is that you want to get out there in terms of to let us know what's happening in your work.
Right. So, but closer to home in terms of what we're doing in the Institute, we do have, like I said, we have a lot of male students, we have our male lecturers and adjuncts, and we also have courses focused on men, masculinities. Warren teaches, I think, the masculinities course that we have. We have a course on sexualities, which looks at a range of issues. And surprisingly, we have a lot of men who are showing interest in the program, men who are doing their PhDs in gender and development. We have a PhD who has graduated and gone on to do wonderful things. He looked at abortion and how men experience abortion. He took it from the male perspective. So we have a lot of good work that's going on. Myself and my colleague, Dr. Delia Bean, we're working on a research paper on our male students and how they experience the gender space, whether the gender space is alienating for them, or whether they experience privileging. So when we have male students, do we privilege them because they are males and we, give them the extra that we're not giving our female students? Or are they feeling alienated in our gender space? So we're doing a project on that. So there's a lot of stuff that is being done, not just for women, but we're trying to have a more balanced approach. We want to have a more nuanced approach to gender studies, looking at power dynamics, and doing a lot more outreach and activism. But I think we need to disseminate the information more.
Right. And I would agree with that, because we don't really know what's happening.
Because
And
people are not aware of what we're doing.
Sorry? No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think more people need to be aware of what we're doing. And I think that's important as well, so that the public is aware.
But with my media background, my suggestion would be a 5-minute, 10-minute feature. Men listen to sports a lot, and so you have to look at the target audience. Premiership happening, so sponsoring something within a sporting thing to give a 5-minute feature, so that the word is out, because they're gonna be glued to that. And so that could be the best connect to ensure that the continuity. But one of the questions I wanted to ask, when a child, especially a boy, reaches to 18, somehow even though the father is not there seems to be a push to now have that closer bond. Do you find that in your studies? So they're quite aware of, through the years, the situation, but somehow, and I think it's boy, or it's even kids who were adopted, there's that thing that at that age they want to seek to have some closer relationship. Is there something that makes that happen? So it's not that they don't know that the existing parent did a great job. It's just that they just want to connect.
You want to say that, Doctor? I mean, Warren?
I can't really speak to that in terms of empirical research. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I don't know if Warren has any.
I'm not aware of any empirical research as well, either. But from my own experience, as a male, there are things that you perhaps want to know from a man, from a male, and is that you're going to learn it from your friends, or you're going to look to your father. One of the issues that we have is that many fathers are not willing or are not empowered to have some conversations. And I'll tell you my own experience. I remember growing up, there's a particular question I had, and I asked my father one day. I said, "Tell me about Sansa. What do you think about Sansa?" And his response to me was, "I soon come." Up to today, up to today, he hasn't come back. I had to go to mommy and say, "Mommy, tell me about so-and-so." And she was able to have the conversation with me. So I mean, I felt more comfortable asking my father, right? But it was mommy who was willing to have the conversation. So maybe there's I don't know. We perhaps need to do the research. Maybe there's a natural pull to well, I mean, 18 is a little bit old, but if you look at the theories, the psychoanalytic theories, certainly earlier, boys identify with the male figure in their lives, identify with the father, and so on. So,
before you go, Doc, I wanted to ask you: is there any studies being done on because a lot of fathers have suffered from this jacket phenomenon?
Paternity fraud.
Yes, paternity fraud. And is there any well, I suppose you don't do you operate on a policy level? Do you operate on a policy level? I'm not sure as to the powers of your institute.
Well, we do.
I'm thinking, is there any penalty on a female, from a female standpoint, to have given a man a child for 18 years, knowing fully well that pitney was not his, and him grow the pitney like his own, And then at the end of the day, when you're filing for the child, you realize, are the children, that none of them is yours. What is happening on that side?
Well, we don't have any research on that at the moment, and there is no penalty. No.
Is there a reason why it's not being looked at? Because I hear it's very pervasive in society.
Well,
I hear it's bad in Jamaica.
If we looked at it, a lot of people would be in trouble if there's a penalty for it.
But there should be, so that, you see, the thing is, my problem is we're not going to the root of the matter. Things are just allowed to happen. And is it that it would be unpopular to punish the woman? Why is there nothing being done about the jacket phenomenon?
Well, I'm going to put it to you, though, Sandra, that the root of the matter is not the paternity fraud.
Exactly.
That is a symptom of a.
That is a symptom.
Yeah.
But it's become commonplace.
The root of
what
the
I'm hearing.
The root of the matter
is like, it's nothing for a woman to give a man a child that is not his, knowing fully well. I can understand the mistake. And boy, you just slip and buck your foot. But when a man have a woman have 3 kids and none of the 3 kids are his, something has to be done. It just can't be okay. So what about the man's feelings? What about what happens to the man in this case? Or the children, for that matter? Because at this stage, you're going to tell the child that this man is not your father, as the mother or as the father. And then, people break up at some point, and then the man gone off because, he's hurt, devastated, and the connection or the bond is not there anymore. Some people go on to get over it and move on and can continue the relationship, but some people don't. And there's no penalty for it. And it's not being looked at all. It's not on the table. And most time people find out is when they go to file for their children as a gender affairs body. Nothing.
But I agree with Warren. The paternity fraud is not the root of the matter. It's a symptom of a deeper seated issues of dependency within a relationship, economic dependency. These are deeper, patriarchal issues and how we see our sexuality. These are the deeper issues. And if you want to get to the meat of the root of the problem, it starts with our children and how we socialize our children in gender roles in society. And we have been doing that. We have been doing several interventions in the schools for International Men's Day. We are now in 16 days of activism. 16 days of activism against gender-based violence against women and girls. We're doing several interventions with the schools. And you would be surprised, the kids are very much aware. They're very much in tune with the gender issues. They are
a very huge violation against the man to give him a child that's not his or children that are not his, with no apparent consequences whatsoever. I don't understand.
But Sandra, you have to recognize and accept what Dr. and Warren said, that it goes beyond that.
Okay. But
so you're going to use somebody as an example to say this is what's going to happen to you if you do that. Yeah. But there's no basis under why.
If a man abuses a woman, there's a consequence, right?
Yes.
Isn't this not seen as an abuse of some kind?
Well, in the academia world, there's a deep root.
No. What I'm saying.
In the real world, Sandra, it requires consequence.
When men do something wrong,
yes,
they are penalized or up for penalty of some kind, don't it?
Yes.
So What? So is it
or
that
ought to
this
be.
is not seen as a crime against humanity, as a crime against the male species? What about this man that has poured, show off to him brethren them? You know, walk up and down with the picnic and him back on him side and him hip. This is my child, my gene, my sperm, my everything.
Mhm.
And then to the end of the day, here, this child has nothing to do with him. It's
But
not
the
But
people
they're
around him
doing
probably knew. The people around him probably knew. So
no, we're
why
not talking about who know from who don't know. I am talking about why is there nothing being done? Because we're talking about equal opportunity for the genders. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Right.
But
true?
When we
Sandra,
talk
can I
about
just say,
gender issues,
Yeah.
Sandra, can I just
Yeah. Go
say
ahead,
that
Dr.
yes,
Mara.
I'm sorry that my camera is off now, but I'm having a little computer challenge here.
no problem. We
I'll
can hear you.
come back
Yes,
on. I will come back
yes,
on
yes.
shortly. But there are many things that men also do where there's no penalty. There are many, many things men do in society, right? The promiscuity, the multiple children with multiple baby mamas, outside the outside child, and there are many things that men do and there's no penalty. And I'm not saying that the jacket, as you call it, is correct and there should not be a penalty, but we cannot talk about equality in this way because
Why not?
because there's bad behavior on both sides. There are
But
many,
this is not bad behavior. This is not bad behavior, no. This is you gave me a child that I am financially responsible for. And let me tell you, demanding at that. You are demanding in every way that I take care of this child who does not. Bad behavior is one thing. You're going to sleep with Mary Jane and Susie, right? That's fine. That's not fine, but that's one thing. I'm talking about the legal ramifications of my name being on a birth certificate, which makes me responsible, legally responsible for this child that you said was mine. It's not the same as a man going to sleep with another woman. It's not the same. We're talking about you giving me this responsibility, this financial responsibility, this personal investment in a child that's not mine.
Someone
No,
would have to,
so what is
there are
the question?
issues like that, you know. There are
but
issues like that, but
the
one
question
has to
is,
do that.
if we are addressing gender affairs and we are addressing it equally, because to me, it is in the same it's on the same level as um I don't want it to sound bad if I say it's on the same level as rape, because you took something that did not belong to you, but you gave me something that is not mine, that you are obligating me to at least 18 years, and you are insisting that I take care of this child that is not mine.
Okay, I don't think we should try to make it comparable
To anything else, yeah.
But it's wrong.
Especially rape.
It's
wrong.
bad.
Yeah, it's wrong, and I think we all acknowledge that it's wrong. We're not doing any research on that right now, and there's nothing to hold these women accountable currently. Nothing formal. There's no formal structure other than shaming and whatnot that may take place. There's no formal structure to hold these women accountable right now. You're right. We do need to have some more research on that. It's something we have to pay attention to, and we have to have some policy around that.
It has to
In
be,
terms of perhaps
because nobody's taking the feelings of the man in
family
a
court, and in terms of family
But I
court and
think,
the justice system, I think that is something that can be addressed at that level.
absolutely.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
and I mean, the research on paternity fraud is, I mean, it's something we know has been happening, I mean, ever since. But The research is still very early. It's still very young. We're just now starting to do work where that is concerned. I mean, we're just starting to understand how pervasive the issue is. Yeah.
With Sandra's point, how do you get academics to be involved? What is the lobby to
Academia,
get?
yeah.
But another thing too I want to say is I think we understand how pervasive it is, but it's also difficult to get people to speak about it in a research setting. And that too is one of the problems. When we do research, we also have to be realistic in terms of how we proceed with our data collection and how we proceed in terms of getting people to participate in that research. And a lot of people do not want to speak about it in a public way. You know what I mean?
I can understand that.
So that's one of the challenges we have as researchers as well. But it's definitely something that needs further digging into.
Yeah.
And like I said, it has to be addressed at the family court level in terms of looking at justice and gender justice.
Right. Because I'm saying if we're seeking equality on both sides, we have to look at all areas. That's my thing. We have to look at all areas, and we can't just look at what the women are not receiving or whatever, but also what they're getting and what can be done to, in terms of balance for the male and the female, because you have males suffering under that situation, and the perpetrators are women.
But there's a lot of
to be balanced about that issue.
But there's research being done
under the carpet.
There's research being done on the family court, and things to do, with parenting. And I think perhaps there's an opportunity to include that in that type of research as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. So, Warren, you wanted to say any last words before we wrap up?
No, I'm just want to say that I know we're talking about feminine gender issues and not feminism.
Right.
But Bell Hooks' famous book "Feminism is for Everybody." The conversation is not, or ought not to be, on blaming one sex.
No, we're not.
We're not blaming one sex. We're looking at how both sexes can experience freedom, or freedom from oppression.
A better way.
Pardon me? A better way of living and interacting with each other. So that's it. When we study gender, that's what we're looking at. We're looking with a vision for a better society.
And just to add one thing to what Warren is saying, Sandra, I think you started by saying when men hear gender studies and feminism, they're like, oh no, it's about male bashing.
Right.
But I think people need to know too that that masculinity studies emerged out of a feminist movement. Right? In the 1970s, the feminist movement, this was a time when many men and male academics took the opportunity to be reflective about their own circumstances and their own situations. And that is how masculinity studies emerged. And initially it was masculinity as a concept, but then it evolved to masculinities because there was a recognition that there are different types of manhood and
different ways of expressing.
And men have different ways in which they manifest and express their manhood. So I think this is an important point that must be made. We are not at two opposites. We are part of the same conversation, and we should be, and our society needs to be aware of that we have to look at the interrelationship between the masculine and the feminine. And
absolutely, I'm in total agreement with that. Pat, you have any wrap-up points?
Just to say that there needs to be a continuous evolution of the academics and the reality, because listening, I noticed that in my own upbringing of my son, the positive energy and the positive nature of what went right, there is not much of that conversation to ensure that persons out there know that there is good coming from your making certain sacrifices, even though things didn't go right. I also am happy to know that listening to the research, because again, data research is critical to anybody going anywhere. So I'm a product of educators, so I'm always for anything that there's a study, so that when we speak with authority of facts to match back the things that maybe mine is more from emotions and what happened, but it needs to be fused. And if we start doing that one off of the reality of what went well with what went wrong, to so that we persons can see that there is a possibility for change in situations that they thought probably generations of a continuous, abuse. Because if I saw my father do it, I'm going to do it, and my child see me do it. There has to be something that says, not necessarily. You can be a single parent, you can be a single mother and have a successful relationship with your ex, with your children, success for a family to happen, even though you live at different places. So I'm just encouraging those persons out there who are listening that don't give up. As long as there is a possibility, and in fact, I believe that the less socioeconomic position you're in, seemingly there seems to be more benefits. Because as long as your income is of a certain level, there is, well, certainly I didn't see where I fit into anything that was a norm. People who have 10 children can go to PATH, people who have X can go there, but the other person who work, struggle through, there is not much. So there needs to be a balance, because persons in all areas of the socioeconomic go through situations that require help. But I'm thankful that even though part of the panel, it is a good learning experience to know what is happening in academics. So
Great.
thanks.
Last week, Nashan Miller, he made a point, and I want to say this before I end this program. He's a part of the, can't remember his title now, Bureau of Gender Affairs. And he was saying that when he just joined, because he's at the male desk, I didn't even know that a male desk existed. And he was saying that when he just went there, he was nervous. And that's why I asked a question about what women are doing. He was nervous to approach what women needed to do or what women were doing. Because if a man said something, he felt like he was bashing women. And nobody wants to be seen as a female basher. So I'm just saying, in this conversation that we're having about whether it's feminine gender or the masculine gender, it's just being fair on both sides and understanding that both genders have real issues. Just as you pointed out, and just as Doc pointed out, just as Warren pointed out, that men have a lot of issues, and I can tell you because I've had them in my ear for a very long time, and they go through the parenting issues and the fathering issues and the feeling like a paycheck issues and the baby mama drama issues and all of those issues. So my reason for bringing both sides to the fore is that we must have a conversation. We are not enemies. Both sides have valid points. And although it may seem as if we're only focusing on the women, there is work being done with the males and for the males. And so I want to thank my audience for joining tonight, and thank my panel, my wonderful panel, Dr. Mortley and Warren Thompson and Pat Gillings, for giving us all this information tonight that I am sure, somebody was saying that this forum should have been jam-packed because of the issues that we were discussing and the information that was disseminated tonight. I just want to thank you for participating and bringing this very needed information to my guests, my platform and my village. So thank you very much. Good night. I want to say good night to everyone on the platform, and it is the end of the season. So I won't be back next week. I will be back next year in January sometime, where we'll be talking about lots more topics, and for sharing, because what we want to do is to see a better Jamaica where we can work, raise our families, and what is it saying again? Raise our families, do business, and the three things.
Decent life.
Retire, die, and rest in peace. Retire, die, and rest in peace.
I say it every week, where we can do business, live,
Live.
work, raise our families, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what we want. We want a better Jamaica. So we are talking about all topics concerning, dealing with all topics with a possibility of solutions, because we are solution oriented. So that is why I bring the experts to the fore to speak on the topics that I have dealt with for the entire 2 seasons. So thanks again. Good night. Have a Merry Christmas when it comes. And
Thank
thanks
you.
Thank you.
for saying
Thank
yes,
you.
because I know you are all busy. And so I really appreciate the information that you have given us tonight.
Thanks
Good
for
night.
having me, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much. God bless.
Bye.
Everybody, good night.
Bye.